One autumn day, the grandmothers gathered together on the benches to talk to each other. The atmosphere was good. A light breeze was blowing. The weather was sunny. The children were sitting at school in class, so no one interfered. The idyll was interrupted by a sharp blow and the crunch of some kind of bag that fell from somewhere above to the entrance exit. The grandmothers were scared, and one of them even jumped in surprise. They immediately turned towards the fallen object and screamed in horror. It was not a bag at all, but the corpse of a boy. He looked about 10-12 years old. Two grandmothers even fainted, but one of them guessed to call the rescue service. The ambulance and the police arrived. Doctors pronounced the boy dead, and the police began to interview eyewitnesses. It was quickly found out that this boy studied at a school nearby. On the same day, the dead man's best friend showed up. He said that Gosha decided to skip the test and climbed onto the roof to take beautiful photos of the city. Then everyone immediately decided that it was just an accident. Apparently the boy stumbled or could not resist, so he fell down and crashed. 2 weeks later, many people had already forgotten about this incident, but suddenly a boy fell off the roof again, now another one, and also to the death. They were again written off as an accident, but over the next month, several more boys crashed, falling off the roof. Everyone thought it was very strange. It is unlikely that all 7 boys fell from the roof because of their carelessness, and even in such a short period of time. This has never happened in the city before. It was assumed that the boys themselves jumped from the roofs, but this version was quickly abandoned. They all came from well-off families without any problems, and before their deaths, the boys behaved quite normally. They thought that there was a maniac in the city who pushes boys off the roofs, or maybe even specially drags them to the top of houses in order to dump their victims from there. It is noteworthy that the boys fell in different regions of the city, so no one could figure out which area the criminal was operating in. There was a panic in the city. Parents were afraid to let their children go and forbade them to walk at a late hour. Trips to the roof were strictly forbidden, and the guys themselves did not want to go there for any money or encouragement. No one wanted to repeat the fate of the crashed boys. However, not everyone was afraid. One 6th grader named Kolya decided that it was all nonsense and a stupid fuss. He has been doing Kudo for 3 years now, and recently his dad gave him a butterfly knife for his birthday. The boy always carried a weapon with him and considered himself invincible. Kolya also thought that if he could defeat the maniac, he would become the coolest in school. Maybe they'll even give him an award and show him on TV. The boy loved being the center of attention. One day he finally climbed onto the roof to argue with a friend. He had to sit on the roof for half an hour, and at the end, go to the edge and shout to a friend who was sitting on a swing in the yard. It had already snowed, so Kolya was calm. If the maniac decides to attack, the crunch of the snow will give him away, and the boy will have time to turn around, get a knife, and fight back. Nothing bad happened to Kolya in half an hour, so he calmly walked to the edge of the roof to signal a friend. Kolya's friend watched this and was suddenly horrified as the boy leaned forward sharply and flew down. He was incredibly lucky because he fell on the roof of the balcony of the last floor. That was the only thing that saved Kolya. The police and ambulance were called again. The boy broke his leg, but remained alive. Kolya immediately said that someone pushed him in the back, which is why he fell. However, it was very strange for several reasons. Firstly, no outsider entered the entrance. Secondly, Kolya's friend did not see the attacker behind his friend's back. Thirdly, there were no traces of anyone except the boy on the roof. What kind of invisible maniac is this? The witnesses and the police were perplexed. How does he manage to remain unnoticed? They decided that the maniac should be caught with live bait. Otherwise, the sacrifices will not stop. They set up an ambush on one of the roofs of the city. A young policeman was placed at the edge of the roof. He had just joined the police force and looked like a schoolboy in his height. A safety rope was attached to him, and he was told to walk along the edge of the roof. Several more policemen hid behind the buildings on the roof and waited for the maniac to appear. 2 hours have passed, but the perpetrator has not appeared. The police have already thought about ending the operation for today. Suddenly, a grey bird flew up to the roof. At first, no one paid attention to her, but she made a momentary jerk and crashed her paws into a young policeman. The man fell over the edge of the fence, but the safety rope saved him from falling. The police did not expect that the bird would turn out to be a terrible killer. At first, they looked at the unknown bird flying away in shock, after which they finally hurried to help their colleague. No one wondered what kind of bird it could be that kills people by pushing them off the roof. Someone even began to make terrible assumptions that the birds decided to rebel against humanity. The police officers who participated in the operation to capture the maniac were ordered to ambush on the roof again to kill the bloodthirsty bird. A group of armed police officers came to the roof again. The young policeman again took on the role of bait. The rest hid behind the superstructures and prepared for the appearance of the bloody guest. After a while, the bird actually flew up to the roof. The police aimed their pistols and the sniper readied his rifle. The bird was not at all afraid and opened its beak. A bullet flew out of it and hit the sniper right in the head, instantly killing the latter. The rest of the police began to shoot at the flying killer in a panic, but she deftly dodged the shots. The bird continued to attack its enemies, opening its beak, from where bullets were coming out at breakneck speed. She managed to kill another policeman and injure two. Finally, the young lieutenant was able to hit the bird. She was wounded in the wing and fell onto the roof, right at the feet of the police. Just in case, the lieutenant shot the bird again so that it would not kill or injure anyone else. The police examined the mysterious killer and were surprised to find that it was just a robot disguised as a bird. It consisted of a metal structure and a bird cover. The inscription ZRM was barely visible on the case. A robotics and mechanical engineering plant, the lieutenant explained. We have one in our city. The investigation team went to this factory. They called the director of the plant, showed the remains of the robot bird, and told about the terrible murders. The director was very scared and said that he had absolutely nothing to do with it. Then the man was asked where the robot could have got this tag. The director explained that the plant does not produce such robots, but supplies parts and mechanisms to its customers. It became clear that someone had purchased parts from this factory and then constructed a killer robot. All that remained was to find the villain among the many customers. Then the director remembered that a month ago, they had a big order from a slightly strange man who looked like a professor. He bought products from the factory with parts designed to create movable mechanisms and limbs from robots. The director gave the investigators information about the strange buyer. The police decided to visit the professor. His name was Sergei Vladimirovich, and he lived just not far from the factory. They came to this man's house and he greeted them in work gloves and covered in dust and engine oil. The police immediately suspected something was wrong. One of the precinct officers noticed the door behind the bookcase and decided to inspect it. As soon as Sergei Vladimirovich saw this, he immediately grabbed a wrench and tried to hit the uninvited guest. The rest of the police were confused and instantly stopped and handcuffed the professor. In a secret room, the police found a real workshop. All kinds of parts, gears, wires, electrodes, and tools were scattered here and there. There was a dog in the farthest corner, or rather it seemed so to the police at first. It was another robot that was almost like a real dog. Only a bare metal skull with a lot of wires and microchips gave away the artificial origin of this creation. Sergei Vladimirovich did not deny it, and admitted that it was he who created the killer robot in the form of a bird. The police also found out the story of the mad professor. Previously, he worked as an engineer at the robotics and mechanical engineering plant, where he was one of the best employees. He also had a family, a beloved wife and daughter. The girl's name was Anya. When she was only 9 years old, she went to a construction site with her classmates. Anya liked the boy from this company, and she decided that he would definitely like it if he went to the construction site with the guys. The other girls were afraid, but Anya decided to prove her courage to everyone. However, she had an accident. She stumbled on one of the floors and fell down. The height was small, but Anya fell on a long pin that pierced through her little heart. After that, the man couldn't find a place for himself from grief, and then his wife left him. He was later fired from the factory for drunkenness and absenteeism, so he would have drunk himself. But one day, Sergei Vladimirovich decided that he would take revenge. He still had the robotics blueprints from the factory and several sets of parts. He made a secret workshop and began to disappear there for days on end. Additionally, the man ordered a batch of parts from the factory where he worked earlier. Then he managed to make a controlled robot bird, and the former engineer decided to take revenge on all the boys in the same way as his daughter died. Through the cameras installed in the bird's eyes, Sergei Vladimirovich saw everything that was happening and controlled the flight of the robot. When he found out that an ambush was being prepared for his robot, he decided to fight back against the police, but his bird was destroyed. The man only regretted that he was caught so quickly. The professor admitted that he had very little time left to design robots in the form of dogs, cats, and even snakes. "You wouldn't be able to handle them that easily," Sergei Vladimirovich said with a grin. The former engineer was arrested after that. Even later, the father of one of the dead boys almost killed him at the trial, but the enraged man was stopped. Initially, the professor wanted to be imprisoned for life, but it turned out that he was insane, and he had to be sent to a psychiatric hospital for compulsory treatment. The workshop of the professor was dismantled after his arrest. The blueprints were burned, and all the robots were taken apart and melted down so that the inventions would not fall into the wrong hands.